Like, actually, what's happening in Hollow Knight... Fuck. It's not Hollow Knight, it's Silk Song. What's happening in Silk Song is like a good metaphor for what life feels like as an adult. Because you grow up in Act 1. You're going to school. And your parents are like, you gotta get the A's, you gotta do your homework, make sure you eat vegetables, and you get into high school, and they're like, if you don't do extracurriculars, you won't get into college. And if you don't get into college, you'll die. And so you go to college, and you're getting your degree, and you got those counselors there that are just like, let's try to find a career path for you. And they're looking at me, and they're like, well, this is gonna be a tough one, you're fucking odd. But then you keep driving forward, because then you're gonna go to step 2, which is where you're gonna step into the real world. When you get to step 2, that's Act 2. All right, you're in the world. You have a job, you're employed, right? And you're like, yes, I did it. I finally can pay to have a home. I can feed myself. I even have a little money left over for my Netflix subscription. And they go, yeah, that's it. And you go, what about Act 3? And they're like, what do you mean? We're done. We've hit the end. And at that point, this is when every man sometime in his 20s realizes there's nothing more. And he gets capital N, capital H, a new hobby. Oh my God. I'm 29 and I've just worked. Is this it? Is that I'll get into woodworking, I guess. And you join a woodworking forum, you start having woodworking arguments, you learn more about woodworking, and you get like some sense of self, like, oh my God, I know how to build a table. Let me build a more complicated table. And you start getting into your hobby, and then you're like 33, and people are like, what are you about? And you're like, I work, but more importantly, I make tables, right? And you get into that shit. And then at some point, you realize that it's just still Act 2. And you go, oh my God. And you know what you do? You get a new hobby. And you start going, you know what? I guess I do have the time and resources to get into Warhammer 40K. And now you're fucking getting glass containers. You're lining up your armies. And you got little goggles that you put on so you can paint badly. And then you go, this is awesome. I'm going to start reading the Black Library. Because they release one new Warhammer 40K book a minute. And at some point, you're 42 and your kids are now like self-sufficient and you have a bunch of Warhammer stuff that you're trying to share with them, like, this is like really cool. And they're like, yeah, Dad, I'm busy, I'm on TikTok. And you're like, what's TikTok? And then you realize that you don't have a connection to your kid. You don't even know what their hobbies are. You don't know who they are. They're just on this thing called TikTok. And you think to yourself, maybe I'm gonna learn about birds. And then you get that new hobby and you start going outside, you start looking at birds, you get your birding shoes on, right? It's just Act 2 after Act 2 after Act 2. It's just fucking hobbies. That's all it is. And here I am, and guess what I'm doing? I got a hobby. I'm gonna go get this flea, okay? That's what the game is for me. I'm hoping that in Act 3 falls out of the other side, but at some point, much like in life, I guess it just stops. That's a good rant, okay? That's one of my better rants.